On average, cars will get a full redesign every 7 years in order to keep them fresh and to integrate all the latest technology. In the case of this 5th generation Toyota 4Runner, it's been 14 years since it was last redesigned. I mean, I don't even remember 2010. That's an eternity in the automotive world, so we decided to see where the 4Runner stands among its newer rivals. Before we get into that, do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons below to get all of our latest reviews. As with past 4Runners, this 2024 model is based on a mid-size pickup truck, in this case, the Toyota Tacoma. Though, oddly enough, the Tacoma has been redesigned twice in this 4Runner's generation. This year it returns unchanged, which makes sense if it's due to be replaced in a year or two. Now, this particular 4Runner is the TRD Pro model, which is the most expensive and terrain capable in the lineup. In addition to the standard 4Runner mechanicals, this one gets a specific off-road suspension with Fox shocks, unique wheels with all-terrain tires, an exhaust system, beefier underbody skid plates, and a roof rack. Up front, we have this big beveled grille that has more presence than some of the less off-road focused trim levels. It echoes the substantial look of the massive full-size Tundra pickup, and I think it's appropriate here too. Down the side, we have these big fender flares that cover the beefy wheels and tires, but the overall profile is very conventional. In this TRD Pro trim, we have 9.6 inches of ground clearance, an approach angle of 33 degrees, and a departure angle of 26 degrees. Those are decent numbers on their own, but the 4-door Bronco beats it by about 10 degrees, which is huge. Topping it off is this adventure-ready roof rack that has a static load limit of 600 pounds. Now, Toyota doesn't recommend any more than 120 pounds when you're driving. That means if you're into overlanding, you could set up one of those rooftop tents to keep all those critters at bay. Around back, the beveled industrial look continues on the liftgate, which gets a special shout out for having a roll-down window. Now, maybe it's because I'm an older dude and I have fond memories of the first generation 4Runner because it's the first car that I learned to drive stick shift in, but I like the looks of this aging 4Runner. I even like this chocolatey brown, Terra brown paint. But what do you think? Do you like it too, or am I just a relic? Let us know in the comments below. Under the hood of all 2024 4Runners is a 4-liter V6 engine that produces 270 horsepower and 278 pound-feet of torque. It's all routed through a 5-speed automatic transmission and sent to all 4 wheels, though in lower trim levels you can have rear-wheel drive only. Those figures are far from impressive nowadays. By comparison, the Bronco's turbocharged 4-cylinder makes 300 horsepower and has a 10-speed automatic or 7-speed manual. Thankfully, when it comes to off-roading, power isn't everything. But let's face it, most adventure-bound shoppers are spending more time logging miles on pavement. So let's see how this all comes together behind the wheel. Now, power is adequate, but really not much more than that. You really shouldn't be in a rush in the 4Runner, and you really have to give it some throttle when you're merging onto highways. In addition to hearing that V6 hyperventilating, this TRD Pro model also has the kind of sporty exhaust system. And honestly, it doesn't sound great. When I stomped on the throttle, I was briefly worried that someone stole the catalytic converter in the middle of the night. Now, on a long road trip, that droning combined with the road noise can really start wearing you down. With only 5 forward gears in the transmission, the 4Runner isn't as responsive as rivals. It's also not as efficient. It should accelerate to 60 miles an hour in just under 8 seconds, which isn't all that bad for the class, but it does feel slower. Now, there's also a lot of body movement. When you take off from a stop, there's plenty of rear end squat as the nose points skyward. Hit the brakes hard and you'll also get a substantial amount of nosedive. Likewise, cornering spotlights the suspension's softness as it heels over like a sailboat. All of that compliance is great when you're off-roading, but when you're on a twisty road like this, not so much. Even when you're not on a curvy road like this, you'll feel some residual rebounds from the undulations and ruts in the road, but that's usually when it's unloaded. Pack a ton of gear in the back and it tends to quiet the ride down quite a bit. Outward visibility is good, which is especially notable when you're off-roading. The front roof pillar is pushed well forward and doesn't impede my view through sharp left turns. There's also plenty to see out the sides and the back. I realize that my assessment of the 4Runner's on-road manners seem pretty harsh. Keep in mind that when I evaluate off-roaders, I tend to give them quite a bit of leeway. And even with this, the 4Runner lags well behind the competition. Well, that's a clear indication that time has taken its toll. Adaptive dampers and an air ride suspension could help matters, but they can also send that cost skyward. Now, these are all things to keep in mind if you're looking for a brawny commuter instead of a dedicated all-terrain beast. When you are off-roading, there are a lot of controls to assist you, and things can get complicated in a hurry. And that's why it's so important to understand what all of these systems do when you employ them. The owner's manual is certainly your friend in this instance. As for the rest of the 4Runner, well, let's pull over and check it out. The 4Runner's cockpit is definitely more about function over form, but I think this chunky dash with these elements all mesh together well with the exterior styling. Now, it is obviously looking outdated with these analog gauges and this small 8-inch infotainment touchscreen. And the old school climate controls, well, yeah, they all kind of harken back to 2010. Now, even this transfer case shifter has an antiquated look when compared to those push-button actuators in more modern SUVs. But a part of me likes this old school personality. The infotainment system, well, it gets the basics done, and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are included. You won't get some of the off-road apps and gauges that you will with some of the newer rigs, but if I'm being honest, I rarely, if ever, use those apps. As with most Toyotas, you get a full complement of advanced safety features, including adaptive cruise control. Though it did take me a little while to figure out because it has this extra stalk here, and you have to adjust the following distance with this button here. Also, like some Toyotas, this 4Runner tends to be a little oversensitive with its advanced safety features. Getting near a painted lane marker will get the lane departure warning beeping at you, and the forward collision warning isn't really tuned for the up-close defensive driving that we have to do here in LA. To its credit, some of these sensitivities can be adjusted. Materials quality is decent for an off-road vehicle. They typically have an overabundance of hard plastic surfaces for durability. It's nicer than I would have expected, especially for these elbow touch points, which are nicely padded. They have a distinct vinyl-like quality rather than genuine leather, but that's not that uncommon in this class. As far as storage goes, I have a few small pockets here in the center stack, a medium-sized cup holder here, and this slot that holds a cell phone fairly well. It does kind of flop around when you're making turns, though. Behind them is this large armrest bin, and the door pockets are fairly large and can accept some of those larger drink bottles. That means you'll have no problem snacking and staying hydrated on a long road trip. Here in the back seats, I have more than enough legroom, as well as plenty of room under the seat for my feet. I am running out of a little bit of headroom here, which is a byproduct of this elevated stadium seating. The payoff is you get this expansive outward view that you wouldn't get otherwise. Now, you do have this handy center armrest bin, but it's a little bit low, but at least you have some cup holders. You also have two USB-C charge ports. Behind the rear seats, you can cram as much as 47.2 cubic feet of cargo. Now, if you opt for the optional sliding deck, you'll lose some capacity, but depending on your usage, it could be a handy addition. At its maximum, the 4Runner can hold 89.7 cubic feet of cargo, but you'll have to stow the rear seats. Unfortunately, you can't do that from back here. Instead, you have to open the rear doors, tumble a rear seat cushion forward, flip the headrest down, and then drop the seat backs. Once stowed, you have a nice flat load floor, which is much easier to live with than the Bronco's stepped floor. You don't have an option for a hands-free or powered tailgate, but you do at least get these speakers here, which come in handy when you're tailgating at a game. Down here we have a hitch receiver with a 7-pin harness. Properly equipped, the 4Runner can tow up to 5,000 pounds, which should be enough for a small camper. Now, I know I've been beating this nearly dead horse more than usual, but that really comes down to the 4Runner's aging platform. It's a solid off-roader and it'll get you on the same trails as its rivals, but it lags far behind in almost every other way. Considering Toyota's reputation for durability and reliability, it could easily entice adventurous shoppers. The price, however, may keep some shoppers at bay. The base SR5 starts around $42,000, and this top TRD Pro stickers above $55,000. The four-door Ford Bronco has a similar starting base price, but the deeper roster extends to $70,000, not including my favorite, the Raptor, which is above $90,000. Likewise, the Jeep Wrangler starts around $40,000 and rises to over $60,000, with the Brawny 392 cresting at $93,000. While these prices seem comparable, keep in mind how out of date the 4Runner is by comparison. There is another alternative from Toyota in the more affordable and smaller Land Cruiser, but it picks up where this 4Runner leaves off, starting right around $55,000. In terms of fuel economy, the 4Runner is thirsty. It's rated at a rather disappointing 16 mpg city, 19 mpg highway, and 17 mpg in combined driving. The 4-cylinder Bronco beats it by just a few mpg here or there, while the 6-cylinder is fairly comparable. The Wrangler is estimated between 19 and 20 mpg combined until you get to the higher performance models. Now, it also gets a special nod for its plug-in hybrid option too. Personally, it makes more sense to wait a year or two for the redesign rather than spring for this generation of 4Runner. Or maybe even find one on the used car market since they're so durable. Now, if you can't wait, I'd steer you towards the Ford Bronco, as it's just as charming in a nostalgic way, but has way more modern features. But what would you do? Go for the 4Runner or the Bronco? Would you wait for the 6th generation instead? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons below to see all of our latest reviews. For now, it's so long.